first off, I want to thank the grace of heaven and the virtues of the masters, the mercy of the grand predecessors, transmitting masters, lecturers, and everyone here today for this opportunity to talk about the Heart Sutra. Okay, so it's actually, it's about it's really, perfecting wisdom. It is. So, see, the heart of Prajna Paramita. So we've talked about the 6 paramitas, right? And then so Prajna Paramita is the 6th paramita, the number 6, right? The wisdom paramita. So this is kind of talking about that. I mean, so how do we perfect the wisdom? Okay, so so we're gonna go introduce this, give some background about, some general background first about the Buddha's sutras. Okay, so you can say that in general there's 3 categories of expedient teachings, right? The teachings of the Buddha are all what we call expedient. Expedient meaning, you can say like it's convenient. It's whatever is suitable for people to hear, to listen to. Okay, so and so expedient teachings, they can change, so they can be different ways, just like how different people will present or talk about some concept, right? Or teach a concept. Different people will teach it in a different way, and so those are all expedient. But the underlying truth or principle is the same, okay, that they're talking about. So that's what expedient means. So it's there are all sorts of different ways to talk about it, talk about the same thing. All right. Now, so during Buddha's I guess the time of his teaching, 49 years, right? So basically, you can divide into 3 different categories of his expedient teachings, where he's talking about precepts or discipline, right? So that's also one of the 6 paramitas, okay, second one. And then concentration, which is I guess that's the 5th. And then wisdom, okay, so because these 3, they address the 3 poisons, all right? So this is something that you all should know by now. Greed, anger, or you could say rage, and delusion or ignorance, stubbornness, attachments, all that kind of thing. Because these 3 poisons is what causes us to continue to create karma and continue in this vicious cycle, if you will, of rebirth. Okay, so the Buddha, having become enlightened, he realized that, well, okay, so we have to kind of get rid of these, and so his teachings address this. Okay, so now generally there's I guess later on there's some I don't know if it's the Tentai group or whichever branch, they kind of divide up the periods of Buddha's teaching. The first period is what's known as the Avatamsaka, okay, period, and there's also a sutra by that name. But that is basically the teaching of Buddha, or the Buddha nature. Buddha talking about the Buddha nature, okay, the true nature to bodhisattvas. Okay, so this is the okay. So Avatamsaka is also known as the flower garland or flower adornment period, and it's about I guess 21 days, and it's considered like the sudden teaching. So it's the direct teaching of Buddha nature to the bodhisattvas. This is where most people can't really understand it. All right, so obviously his audience is bodhisattvas. I mean, they're already enlightened, so most people couldn't really understand it. And they kind of use like an analogy of saying, like, if they're talking about like the sun, so this teaching is like the sun is just rising, Okay, it's just coming up above the horizon, and it's only illuminating like the mountain peaks, right? So that's basically saying that only those people who have a strong foundation, they're like those mountain peaks, who can really understand. So in this case, it's like the bodhisattvas, right? Okay, another analogy or metaphor that they use is like this is like considered like the raw, unprocessed milk. Okay, which is not suitable for most people. Like most people, if they drink raw, unprocessed milk, they're probably gonna get sick. So, all right. Then the second time, so this lasted only like 21 days. Now, obviously, Buddha realized that most people are not bodhisattvas, and so the next time period, next set of teachings is called the Agama, and this lasted 12 years. Now, it's also known as the Storehouse Teaching. Okay, so this is kind of like the fundamentals of cultivation, of practice, okay, that Buddha taught. And it's also known as, the Hinayana doctrine, or the small vehicle. So this is basically the Theravada Buddhism, right? They are more strict, and they kind of just follow basically these teachings, not the later ones, as their core teachings. Okay, so and so this is also known as the Tripitaka. Okay, basically, but this is the reason why it's called a small vehicle is that it's good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with these teachings. I mean, it's good for the attainment of arhat, becoming an arhat, or reaching the state of arhat, or maybe even the Pratyeka Buddha, right? So these are not, I mean, they can become, at the highest level, an arhat is also, they're also basically enlightened, and they don't necessarily have to reincarnate, okay, at the highest level. Same thing with the Pratyeka Buddha, which is, I guess it's higher than them, but they are kind of, the Pratyeka Buddha is like a solitary Buddha. I guess you can say the arhats, same thing. They're only cultivating for themselves. Okay, so that's it, and they don't really care about other sentient beings, about trying to save other sentient beings, right? So that's why it's called a small vehicle. It's only good for themselves. But so this is kind of the basic teachings and the foundation, you could say, of all the most of the cultivation. But it also includes like the Four Noble Truths, the 12 links of dependent origination. So that's something that we'll talk about today, because that's also mentioned, or it's talked about in this Heart Sutra. Okay, it has precepts as well. So this is like, the sun is starting to rise even higher up in the day, and the light is shining into the valleys. Okay, so this is where most people can accept these teachings and be able to understand and practice them. It's just like coagulated milk, which is suitable for children. Okay, so children being like the common people. Okay, so they're not very advanced. Okay. Now, the next time period is the Vaipolya, which is also known as the correct and equal time period, and that was it's either 8 or 16 years, probably like 8 years. Okay, it's also known as the separate teaching. Now, Buddha here, he then refutes basically what happened is, a lot of his disciples kind of become attached to the teachings in the Agama period. All right, so basically so what Buddha was teaching during this time period is to refute their attachment to the doctrine talked about in the Hinayana doctrine. Okay, because people those practitioners, the cultivators, become attached. Right, so this is kind of like trying to break those attachments, and so this includes various sutras like the Vimalakirti, the Lankavatara, the Shurangama, among others. Right, so Buddha's reminding us not to become attached to Dharma. Right, that's the there's that fa shan, right? The fa zi, where we become attached to dharma. And so it's just like when we learn how to do something, right? Now that knowledge can be useful, or we use a tool to do something, but that tool is, for the most part, it's going to be specific, or it's going to be limited in its use, right? I mean, you can't use a hammer to do everything. So let's say you use a hammer and, you use it, well, for the most part, it's just hammering nails, or you can hit things, but you can't use it for anything else. So obviously, if you've moved on, or we use the the analogy of we use the boat, right, to cross the river or the body of water, right? So, and once we get across, we're back on land. We don't need the boat anymore, right? So, so that's the idea, is that we have to let go of, because if we don't let go, then it becomes a burden, right? Obviously, when you're on land, you don't want to carry a boat with you. That's only going to slow you down, or even prevent you from getting to where you need to go. So same thing. And so that's why the danger of we should not become attached to any kind of method of practice. So even like I know that there are those who practice meditation, but they're attached to that and they're stuck with that. I mean, and so what happens is that meditation, yes, is can be good, but it's not the ultimate. And so if we are stuck on that, then we won't achieve the ultimate. We won't become a Buddha by just through meditation. Okay, so that is just an example. Now, so this is, basically the sun is now like in mid-morning, so it's shining on pretty much most places. And so this is like also the curdled milk, which is pretty much suitable for everyone. Now, the next period, fourth period, is the Prajna period, which is where this Heart Sutra was spoken. So this is where talking about the Prajna teachings, the wisdom teachings. Okay, and this lasted for like 22 years. It's also called the pervasive teaching. So it's the way to get into the great vehicle, basically the Mahayana teaching. Okay, the Mahayana. Right, and so this is where, so this is basically, it's teaching, this teaching is about, obviously it's wisdom and also emptiness, and then we're going to talk about that too. And then so the analogy they use is that, okay, so this sun is now, it's closer to noon, it's almost noon, and it's basically shining everywhere. And or in terms of the other analogy is like, it's basically from the milk you get the butter. Okay, so that's like almost like the cream of the cream of the crop, so to speak. And then so that's suitable for adults, not necessarily for the beginners. All right, and then finally the Lotus Nirvana period, which is the final teachings before Buddha entered Parinirvana. It's also known as the Dharma flower and Maha-Nirvana period, and that lasted 8 years. It's also known as the perfect teaching. There are 2 sutras spoken during this time, which is the Lotus Sutra, which actually took up most of those 8 years, and then the Nirvana Sutra, which took only a day and 1 night. Okay, that was just before Buddha went into Parinirvana. So this is kind of the highest Dharma spoken during this time, right? So this is basically the sun is directly overhead at noon, so it's at its brightest, and it's illuminating everything, right? So this is kind of like you can say the clarified butter, right? It has an exquisite taste, right? So I don't know, that's some people that use that kind of analogy, right, to describe these periods. Okay, all right. So just here, so now the Buddha, he spoke this. This is the Immeasurable Meanings Sutra, which is a prologue to the Lotus Sutra. So this is during that last time period, the Lotus Nirvana time. And what he said is, I made use of the power of expedient means, right? But in these more than 40 years, I have not yet revealed the truth. So despite his teaching for over 40 years, he says that he did not reveal the truth. Okay, so that's because all the dharmas, right? The true dharma cannot be spoken. All right, so so though immeasurable, boundless, inconceivable, asamkhaya kalpas may pass, they will in the end fail to gain unsurpassed enlightenment. All right, so he's talking about the people who just follow those basic teachings, but they will not be able to, and practice them, but they will not achieve the highest, the unsurpassed enlightenment, which is what a Buddha is. Okay, so it's just like those arhat. You can become an arhat or Pratyeka Buddha, right? Why? Because they will not know about the great direct way to enlightenment, but will travel perilous byways beset by numerous hindrances and trials. Okay, because practicing it, one travels a great direct way, free of hindrances and trials. All right, so so this is so obviously he's referring to this other way, which is the direct way to enlightenment. And I believe, it was during this last time period, this final, this Lotus Nirvana period, that he also did, gave the flower sermon where Mahakasyapa, his oldest disciple, kind of, was proven to be enlightened, right? That he understood. And that that was done. The flower sermon is basically the Buddha holding a lotus flower in front of his face and not saying anything. So that is the wordless teaching, basically. Okay, that is the true Dharma. Now, for most of us, we do that. We're not really teaching the true Dharma. Okay, but the Buddha was teaching the true Dharma, and Mahakasyapa understood. Okay, realized that there's a Buddha nature. There's something. Everything is basically empty, sunyata, and but there is this Buddha nature, okay, that is aware, right? But anyways, so that's kind of where it is. All right. Okay, so the title, right? This is the title in Chinese would be the Mohe Boro Mi Do Xing Jing. Okay, so yeah, if you want to translate that, then it says they have the additional, there's a Maha Prajna, which, okay, that's like the great wisdom, okay, the great Prajna, heart of Maha Prajna Paramita Sutra, okay, but, people like to keep things short, so Heart Sutra is what it is, all right, is what the common title is. And it's very concise. It's actually the shortest, I don't know if it's the shortest overall sutra, but it's definitely the shortest of the Prajna Paramita sutras. All right, and it's only 260 Chinese characters, which is probably, I think it's only about 12 lines of the original Sanskrit. Okay, and it is essentially the essence, right? The essence, or you can say the core of the Prajna Paramita teachings, sutras. All right. And that's why it's so concise, so condensed. But again, it is, all the Prajna Paramita sutras, they're really all talking about emptiness or sunyata. Okay, and so Mahaprajna means great, or you can say perfect, divine wisdom, or very profound wisdom. Paramita is to perfection. Okay, so but we have to basically teaching us that we have to experience and realize the true enlightened mind. Okay, so it's not just through the knowledge. It's not. It's also not through our normal thinking, right? Because we won't be able to achieve that true enlightenment through our normal way of thinking about it. Now, some other, just example of other Prajna Paramita Sutras. The Diamond Sutra is also very well known, and it's about 300 lines. So this is probably the second shortest one after the Heart Sutra. And then the longest, and there's a whole bunch. And then the longest one is this Satasahasrika Sutra, which is about 100,000 lines. Okay, so obviously no one wants to memorize that and try to recite that one. It's too long. So actually everyone likes the Heart Sutra because it's the shortest and it's easy to recite, I guess. But whether people really understand it is another story. All right, so Prajna Paramita, again, is the perfection of wisdom, right? So we talked about that's part of the 6 paramitas, the 6th paramita. And we're talking about transcendent, or you can say profound or divine, perfect wisdom. Okay, so this is not your typical, what we typically think of as wisdom, or in everyday life, right? The wisdom that we say is common sense wisdom, or which is really, it's all mundane wisdom. It's all having to deal with everyday stuff. And you can say this common sense wisdom or mundane wisdom is kind of based on certain logic. Okay, you can probably use a certain logic to arrive at that wisdom. However, this, what I'll call this transcendent wisdom or profound or divine wisdom, doesn't necessarily follow some logic. Okay, I would say that it comes from this what I would call transcendent awareness. Okay, to distinguish that from our typical sensory awareness, right? So yeah, so sometimes we say, oh, sixth sense or some yeah, so that's not based on our, what we can see, hear, touch, etc. Right? So it's like, you can say it's like this awareness ultimately is like the all-knowing awareness, the omniscience. Okay, like a Buddha is all-knowing, right? Because it's basically, they have this transcendent awareness that's aware, they are aware of everything. Okay, so that's where this wisdom comes from, this awareness. Okay, so these two are kind of linked, the awareness and the wisdom. All right, because this wisdom is not knowledge. It's not the knowledge that we think of. It's definitely not external knowledge. Okay, there's you can use the term a psychology term called noumenon to refer to. It's like inherent knowledge. It's something that you know internally without getting from anywhere else. All right. Okay, so anyways, understand and realize the essence of the heart and mind. Okay, so that's what this is all about. It's the perfection of wisdom as the realization or direct experience of sunyata. So sunyata is basically, you can say it's true emptiness, or like the void nature of things. Okay, well, you have to understand, because in Buddhism or in the Tao, we talk about, emptiness. Emptiness, it's not just the absence of matter or nothing. It's not nothingness. Okay, there is, for lack of, we don't have the right words, but there's something. Okay, it's not nothing. You can say that it's a scaffold or a matrix in which all phenomena comes into existence. Okay, and it's also really indicating the dependent nature of all phenomena. Okay, so the dependent nature of all phenomena, we'll get into that with the dependent links of origination. So that's related to this. Right? Actually, the ancient Greeks, they had a similar concept called the ether. Okay, and it was kind of like, they consider it to be like a medium. By medium, I mean like water as a medium for like fish to swim in, right? Or the air as a medium for us to that we can live in, we breathe. Okay, or even like space as a medium for all for the whole universe. Okay, to exist in. So actually, that's kind of getting close to what this is, right? Okay. Now, the problem is, emptiness, sunyata. It's hard to grasp. For most people, they say, "Well, hey, everything looks real to me. I can touch it. I can, I can see it. Right? I can hear it. I can taste it. I can smell it. It's all real." Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, that's it's related to this 5 skandhas that we always talk about, and also, we'll talk about that as well. But okay, but it's really because we have an inverted view of true reality. Okay, the true reality is that things are empty. Now, things are empty doesn't mean that these don't really exist. Okay, but okay, so basically, what sentient beings do is they believe that what is really impermanent to be permanent. All right, so the things that, well, what's impermanent? I mean, what's permanent or what's impermanent? Let's say we have, let's say, a cup. Okay, so I have a cup, and obviously we know what a cup is. It's it's a vessel, I guess, that can hold water or liquid or something. Okay, and well, the thing is, okay, so that's really just a label, right? So we say, oh, this is a cup. Okay, so that's kind of we just like a definition, a label, a name. But if I break this cup into pieces, is it still a cup, right? It's not permanent, obviously. The cup can break, right? So it doesn't last forever. And so, but there are a lot of different things. I was like, oh, diamonds are forever? No, diamonds. Well, these things change, right? It's because of the carbon atoms that were crushed under pressure, under heat, that formed that diamond crystal. Okay, so but it can still be destroyed. It can still change or whatever. Okay, so things aren't really permanent. We view our life, there's another one. But so a lot of things that sentient beings assume to be permanent aren't really permanent. And obviously we know that our life is limited, right? I mean, we have a limited lifespan. And a lot of things are, but I guess the view is that this reality that we're in, I mean, is real and permanent. But we have to realize that there's always changes. Things are always changing. Okay, things can change, and so in that sense, they're not permanent, right? And also in terms of time, they're not either. Okay, and then so people also believe that, well, what is really suffering to be joy? Now this is definitely inverted. People like so what is suffering? Basically, suffering. We talk about the 8 sufferings, right? Birth, aging, sickness, and death. And also the separation from loved ones, or basically, the things that we desire or like. If things are, the things that we like are taken away from us, or the people we love are taken away from us, okay, that's a suffering. Or kind of the opposite, where we are in contact with those that we dislike, either people or things, okay. And then also not getting what we desire. Okay, so unfulfilled desires. And then finally, the conscious attachment to and the belief in the 5 skandhas. Okay, so that's another suffering. Okay, that causes, in fact, a lot of the other sufferings. Okay, so like birth, it's kind of interesting because most people, they view birth as it's a good thing, it's joyful, right? Oh, a new life has come into the world. But actually, do we ask the baby whether they are happy to be born? Okay, this is from the third party's point of view that hey, it's joyful. but maybe the baby is suffering. Maybe the baby didn't want to be born. Right. So, and then on top of that, right, the person is then, or the child is then brainwashed into thinking that birth is a joy by celebrating birthdays every year. Right. So, okay, I'm kind of half joking about that, but it is. It's kind of weird that you're viewing that as kind of a joyful thing, and we're also celebrating, hey, getting older every year, just aging. It's kind of weird too, because as we age, we're getting closer to death, and I don't think anyone celebrates death. So, but anyways, so this is how humans or sentient beings have this inverted view of things. Okay, and then they believe what is not a self to be a self. So what is the self? Right? Is it this body? Is it personality, ego? Is it the soul? So this is obviously, like I said earlier, the body isn't permanent. Okay, it's not the true self. You can say that maybe is it the personality? Well, the personality from one life to the next life, the personality changes. Okay, I mean there could be things that carry over, things maybe certain habits or inclinations carry over from one life to the next. But the overall personality will not be the same. The name will not be the same. The body will not be the same. Okay, so the circumstances will not be the same. So everything pretty much is different. So what is the only? I mean, so all the things that we believe is the self, who we think we are, is really, it's not permanent. It's constantly changing from one life to the next. Okay. And really, it is, all this life is a result of karma and dependent origination. Okay. And so this view of self, which is not the everlasting self, is not the true self. It's actually, so there's the concept of anatta that we've talked about before, right? There's really no self nature, no no essence, okay, to that self. That the one that the false self that we think, right? And then finally, the believe what is impure to be pure. So to be impure meaning that something can be defiled, something can be corrupted. Okay, so everything, anything that has material things can be corrupted. Okay, just even our body. Okay, so our body, obviously, you can say that, well, okay, so when we get sick, it's corrupted. Okay, so I mean, it's out of balance. There's stuff that shouldn't be in the body, right? But also, even our heart and mind can be corrupted. Okay, so so this is, we think that, what's pure is not really pure, though, right? Now, okay, so we basically, this is, we're not enlightened because we also, we're kind of stuck on forms for the most part. These are forms, and so we have these attachments, right? So we need to kind of, if we don't want to be a sentient being, if we want to become enlightened, we have to kind of correct our views of things. Right. Okay, so I'm going to mention like the Matrix. I don't know if you've seen the movie, right? The original one, right? The 1999 Matrix, right? It's actually talking about this, saying that existence or life and the world or universe is just a simulation, or you can say an illusion, a dream, right? A virtual reality. And that's what the Buddhists view is. Okay, and so in the movie, right, their depiction of what the true reality is of that reality is just like these symbols and numbers or whatever. Okay, so but yeah, that is really what it is. I mean, we think that this is real, but it's really it's not. It's all dependent on causes. Basically karma. Everything is created by karma. Okay. Now there is, but just like in the movie, where you can say the protagonist, Neo, he's the hero. Okay, so he gets awakened. He gets awakened by other, you can say, bodhisattvas, if you will. Okay, they were already awakened, and they awaken him and extract him from this dream world, if you will, this virtual reality, and he returns to the true reality. Okay, so there is this existence, you can say it's a transcendental existence outside of the virtual reality, in the true reality, which the true reality is, we call it, it's the Dharma Dhatu, okay? But, so this is, so right there, if you watch the movie, you'll understand, okay, that, oh yeah, this is what Buddha, Buddha's teachings, he's talking about this kind of thing, okay, or what Buddhism talks about. And so, what's interesting though, even though this is kind of an aside, I guess, but one of the characters in there, I think his name was Cypher, he was also awakened, okay, because he was also returned to that true reality. He escaped from the virtual reality, but yet he decides to go back to that virtual reality. He wanted to stay in the virtual reality. He enjoys his steak, and even though he knows it's not real, okay, but he just can't get over the taste, okay, his desires, his taste, so he can't get over those. So because of that, then he's returning back to that virtual reality, that illusion, that simulation. Okay, so obviously in Buddhism terms, that would be the reincarnation, the samsara. Okay, so he's going back to that. So if even though he was awakened, so even though we have to cultivate, in other words, we have to cultivate, and we have to make sure that our mind is clear, that we have very clear on what's the truth, what the right principles are, and we practice, we cultivate. Otherwise, it is. And we have to overcome, right, those three poisons. So greed, you can say, broaden that to include desires. Okay, so we have to overcome those things. If we can't overcome those things, then we're going to still be stuck in that cycle of rebirth. All right. Okay. So now we have to understand this sunyata, this emptiness. All right. So so basically, this is going to be kind of a long introduction leading into the sutra itself. But I think this is it's kind of laying some foundation for that. All right, so sunyata, this emptiness that we talk about, or the true emptiness, it's all pervading and contains everything. Okay, so it's just like, and there's nothing that goes beyond it, right? So some people ask, well, how big is the universe, right? What's beyond the universe? Okay, is there anything beyond that? Well, you can say that this emptiness, space, right, it could be infinite. I don't know. We just can't, we can't see, right? We can't see beyond the edge of the universe. Well, is there an edge? I don't know. We can only see as far as the light that reaches us. Okay, so as far as we know, the universe is about, I think it's about, 45 or 46 billion light years in diameter. Okay, that's based on what we can see. Now, the problem is the universe is also expanding, and it's expanding faster than the speed of light. Therefore, things that are too far away we'll never see. All right, the light will never reach us. Therefore, we're never going to know what's beyond, or what's beyond this limit that we've seen, okay, up to 45 or 46 billion light years. So it could be bigger, it could be infinite for all we know. But space, it's kind of like this emptiness in that it doesn't matter. I mean, when we talk about the universe, though, of course, there's things, there's galaxies, there's stars, planets in this universe. Okay, so if the universe was empty, then you just it'd just be empty space, and it'd be kind of meaningless to talk about that, right? So actually, we can talk about in relation to the universe, but anyways, there is nothing beyond it. All right. Is the point, because everything actually has to or comes into existence, I said earlier, within this emptiness. Okay, now nothing is smaller. Okay, there's something called this Planck length. Okay, so Max Planck, he came up with a bunch of constants, this being one of them, and this is supposedly the smallest unit of measure that you can get. Okay, so this is a very tiny number. Okay, so it's 1.6 by times 10 to the minus 35 meters. To get an idea of what that, how small that is, if you take a point, let's say a dot, okay, a dot that is 0.1 millimeter. Okay, so roughly, and that may be smaller than like the diameter of a hair, okay, human hair. If you expand that dot to the size of the universe, so like 45 or 46 billion light years, right? And then you take another dot that's 0.1 millimeters in size. That is the Planck length in that new scale. Okay, so it's tiny. Okay, but this emptiness is, you can't go, keep zooming in down to a smaller scale to find, say, oh, there's no emptiness here. Okay, so in other words, emptiness is not like matter, where you have there's you can say there are atoms here, and then there's space between the atoms, but it's not like that. So it's actually this emptiness is actually that space within the atom, between the atoms, and it's actually everywhere. Okay, so but anyways, it pervades all matter. Okay, so even though we have something that's solid, there's still that emptiness within it, right? Because if you destroy this solid thing, or you move it, that emptiness is there. Okay, it's not like it displaced any emptiness. Okay. All right, and then, all right, so matter does not displace emptiness. All right, so, sorry. Okay, all right, and then another aspect you can say is it's absolute. It's basically the suchness. Okay, it's undifferentiated. All right, this emptiness. It cannot be divided up. Basically, I cannot say, oh, if I go into space and I take a jar and I take it up into space, and then I close up the jar, and I quote unquote capture some empty space, and I bring it back with me. Well, actually, that empty space is still there. Okay, and I didn't really take any of it. Right, so it encompasses relativity and duality, or the yin and yang and change. Okay, so even though this emptiness, or this nature of emptiness, doesn't change, and it's absolute, and yet the yin and yang, the taiji, everything you can say springs up from it. Okay, within it, right? Now there is this also interesting thing about, in physics we understand that things have a dual nature, right? Acting as a particle or a wave, or actually both. And so you can say that there's some kind of an inherent duality in everything. Okay, even though what it was originally, like we talked about the Buddha nature, the essence, right, and this emptiness nature, they're absolute. but yet, the things that are created within it have a dual nature to them. Okay, I don't know. That's just kind of an interesting thing about it, right? Okay, so now the essence is like, you can say it's like this is white light, right? White light, but when it's manifested as phenomena, it can be separated into a rainbow of colors, right? We say, oh, it's white, but yet you can split it and show that it's actually a bunch of different colors. So being, absolute, so that's how you can have something that coming from the absolute, you can have, you can create all sorts of things. So, because even though you're not splitting it up, you're not dividing it up, but it's composed of those, all right, different things. All right, this empty nature is also, it's non-obstructing, okay, which means that, one thing is that phenomena can only exist in this emptiness, right? Without this emptiness, it's like without the space, without the empty space, things can't appear in that, they can't appear, okay? Matter cannot exist outside the emptiness, right? Emptiness defines the space in which all matter exists, all right? So it's just a different way of saying it. Now, matter, on the other hand, when you have matter, it's obstructing, it rises and falls, it, basically it can be created and can be destroyed. Whereas this emptiness is, it isn't created and it isn't destroyed either, all right? And it doesn't prevent, the matter that's in it from performing its inherent functions, right? So the sunyata is also, there's no rising and no falling, right? Yeah, you can kind of relate to this in the way of, the first law of thermodynamics, conservation of energy and matter, right? So energy, matter, equivalence, right? E equals mc squared. Basically, energy and matter can transform from one to the other. So there's no real creation and destruction going on. Everything, whatever, I mean, I don't know if we can quantify the amount of energy that was there in reality, okay, in all of reality, but, whatever there is that's in there is just transformations from one form to the other. So you can say that energy is the formless, matter is the form. So form and formless, okay? They just transform from one to the other, right? Cessation or extinction and calmness, okay? Or you can say calmness is like, it's the steady state, okay? So then you have the second law of thermodynamics, says increasing entropy, which basically, if you look at the universe, in the end, everything is heading towards entropy. Okay, so this is kind of this law of nature, where, yeah, it seems like things are going towards, you can say, chaos, right? Decay, destruction, right? Eventually, the universe is just going to be a dead universe where there's no more stars being created, no more life, everything. It's just kind of like, it just becomes dead. Okay, so but then that's basically returning to stillness, calmness. Okay, and actually that's what I mean. They kind of make a kind of equate that to like when we return to nirvana. We reach nirvana, we return to that state, ultimate state of calmness or quiescence. Okay, and so this is this is kind of associated or related to that. All right. Okay, so enlightenment. From the point of view of enlightenment, when we're talking about enlightenment, right? Sunyata is the reality of all phenomena or worldly existence, which is dharma. Right? It is the realization of the bodhi, the prajna. Okay, so we have to realize this, truly realize, understand this sunyata, and it's not through our normal human comprehension. Right? We have to actually realize, basically achieve the state of sunyata, emptiness. Right? And it doesn't come from worldly knowledge. Okay, so although we talk about it, but we can't really achieve that state through this knowledge. So again, it's internal realization, right? Using our wisdom, just like enlightenment. Okay, it comes from within. Right? We can't get it from the outside. Okay. So, and then from the point of view of liberation, sunyata is the skillful means by which we are disentangled from defilement and unsatisfactoriness. Okay, basically dukkha. So this allows us to transcend this samsara, right? The realization of sunyata leads one to no attachment and clinging. Right? It is a skillful means towards enlightenment and also the fruit of enlightenment, or nirvana. Okay, so that's why we talk a lot about, not having attachments, desires, and, although here is saying, that once we realize sunyata, then, obviously we won't have no attachments. But of course, to get there, it's kind of like a chicken and egg problem, but we have to kind of practice letting go of attachments to get there. And so it's kind of, we do have to practice it. Okay, so to get there as well. All right. So yeah, we have to use our prajna wisdom and practice letting go of all karmic affinities, right, and not giving rise to a single thought. So let go of the attachments, basically not, and also not give rise to desires, subject-object duality, all that kind of thing that we've talked about before. Okay, this is okay. So the sixth patriarch, when he became enlightened and he realized sunyata himself, he says, "How amazing that the self nature is originally pure." Okay, so now we're talking about self nature. Sunyata, it's closely related. Actually, right here, down here, we say Zenkong Miaoyo. Okay, so basically you can say it's the true emptiness plus there's something else. We call that the Buddha nature. Okay, so they're linked. These two are linked together. There's that true emptiness, that void nature, plus the Buddha nature. Okay, sometimes maybe we talk about the Buddha nature, maybe is kind of encompass the whole thing, but there's kind of, you can say they're kind of like these two aspects. There's that emptiness plus there's something else which we call the Buddha nature essence. Okay. And so the sixth patriarch says, wow, that self nature is originally pure, right? In other words, it doesn't become defiled, right? It cannot become corrupted, right? Okay. How amazing that the self nature is unborn and undying, so it's eternal and there is no beginning, no end, okay, to it, and it never changes. How amazing that the self nature is inherently complete, right? It doesn't lack anything, right? We think that, well, hey, there are a lot of things that I don't have, right? But actually, the self nature or the Buddha nature has everything, right? And everything's contained within it, okay? And then, so how amazing that the self nature neither moves nor stays, right? Because it's everywhere already, and there's nowhere that it needs to go or can go. Actually, it's already everywhere. Okay, and how amazing that all dharmas come from this self nature. So actually, all dharmas, this dharmas is phenomena. All phenomena comes from this self nature. So this is really a very important point, in that everything comes from this. You can say this sunyata, this emptiness and the Buddha nature, right? Nothing does not come from there, right? So we think, wow, everything, that includes the universe, that includes the people, the animals, everything comes from this self nature. Okay, so that's a very powerful statement, saying that everything comes from that. So in other words, this reality that we living in comes from our true nature, our Buddha nature, really. And so even though it's kind of weird, and then now we think we are living in this reality, but we've created this reality, right? So that's kind of weird. But because we did create it, we can get out of it too. Okay, that's also an important point to remember. All right. Okay, so as 5 skandhas, okay, so just briefly, because we've talked a lot about this already in the past, right? The form, okay, so that's the sense objects and the sense organs, which, basically are six senses, right? The sight, hearing, smell, touch, taste, and mental formations, okay, the things in our mind. Then you have sensation or feeling, which is the result of interaction between the sense objects and senses. Okay, so then we can sense, whether like visually something is light and dark, or like the sounds, whether there's like a very piercing sound or whatever sound, loud or it's quiet. We can feel hot and cold. Okay, all these things. Okay, so we can sense. And then the third one, conception, then is kind of where we know what it is. Okay, so we start identifying and differentiating sensations. Okay, now I think previously I used, I put, well, okay, we'll get to that. But this is where then we start identifying. So we start labeling things. We name things, right? We say, oh, this is hot, this is cold. And we learn to differentiate. And the differentiation is also, you can say, not just knowing the difference, but we might also then have like and dislike. Okay, so because then that affects this next one, volition. Now, like previously, I used differentiation here. Basically, I was trying to kind of look a little bit more fine, have a fine kind of separation between these two, but actually you can say that differentiation happens in the conception, in the ideas, the thoughts. Okay, the volition then is when how you act upon that. Then you have the actions based and intentions based on what we just realized. Okay, or how we differentiate. So this is where you can have then based on whether it's it's hot or it's cold, or you say, oh, is this pleasant or not, or I enjoy this, I want to avoid this. Okay, so that's where that's happening, and then finally consciousness basically it becomes an attachment. Okay, a clinging, an attachment, and it dwells within the consciousness. So this is basically what leads sentient beings to being inverted, really, and to continue to create karma and suffer in an endless cycle of rebirth, right? So this is actually part of the links of dependent origination, right? So, and previously I did say that we want to kind of we want to break out of this, become enlightened. We and get out of this cycle of rebirth. We have to kind of break it here, basically, this differentiation here. Okay, so don't let it go beyond up this point. Okay, all right. Now, so getting to the 12 links of dependent origination. Okay, this basically these are the 12. So it's there's kind of a sequence here. Okay, so basically, you have ignorance, volition, consciousness, name and form, 6 sense faculties, contact, sensation. Okay, so these are, some of these are, it's basically 5 skandhas, and sometimes they're kind of named a little bit differently. Okay, and then you have the craving, clinging, becoming, birth, aging, and death. All right, so here, if we look at these, okay, so what is ignorance? Basically, it's having the wrong views and thoughts, okay? Right, so just like having those 4 inverted views, or not really accepting or understanding the 4 noble truths, okay? And then, the one that comes after is volition. So what causes volition? It's ignorant, okay? So ignorance. So it's because we have the wrong views and thoughts that leads to basically actions of ignorance. Okay, and then Now, so what causes the next one, which is consciousness? It's, again, karma, volition, which then leads to karma. Okay, so basically it's like one of the each, that's why they're called links, right? One is linked to the next, and each one is based on the previous one. Okay, so, and then so it says what causes name and form? It's basically having this dualistic view, the subject-object duality consciousness, okay? And then what causes the six sense faculties is basically the skandha, name and form. So this is basically, well, this is what, it's basically what influences the six sense faculties, okay? And then what causes contact? Well, the fact that we do have the six sense faculties, we're going to have come into contact with things, okay? And then, so what causes sensation and feeling? It's basically that subject-object or contact, okay, with those. And what causes craving is the sensation, okay? So if we have, you know, if something feels good, hey, you know, then I'm going to want more of it. Or if something feels, you know, it's painful, then I want less of it, right? And then, okay, so, and then what causes clinging, the attachment, okay, so this is then having the likes and dislikes, desires and craving, okay, and then what causes becoming, okay, becoming, then you have the previous attachments, clinging, grasping, and then what causes birth? Well, it's because we have those, the becoming, the previous one, the karmic force, you know, after we planted all the seeds of karma and we have those attachments, then we're going to be born again, there's going to be rebirth, and what causes age and death, of course, is birth. Okay, so this is all a chain reaction, if you will. It's just linked one after the other, and so this is kind of another way to look at it. So basically, the past causes. So let's say, so we're in our current life, we're here in this basically from number 3 to number 10. That's our present life here. So how do we get here into this life is because of those first two, ignorance and volition. So we planted the seeds of karma in past lives, in our past life, and then that resulted in our present life. Okay, so that's the present effects here, that we have this attachment in our consciousness. Well, those karmic seeds are there. We have this differentiation, the subject-object duality, through our senses, and then so obviously this is, you can say, look at these as kind of this is our physical being, okay, that we are here, okay, so we have this body, okay, and we have senses, right? And then, well, what we do now is going to affect our future. So the present causes, you know, so now we have desires and craving, we have grasping, clinging, attachments, basically, and then we're going to have becoming or karma. We're going to create karma again. So that's repeating kind of basically, it's basically the same thing as we did in the past life. Okay, so, and then this will basically plant the seeds for the future life, the next life. So that then leads to basically birth, aging, and death again. So basically all of these, you know, this is not like separate. These are kind of like, you can take any of these as to be like the present or future or the past. Okay. All right. Okay, so the pathway causes, again, is ignorance. We're unaware, or we have a misapprehension of the truth. We have the wrong views and thoughts, right? We give rise to thoughts and actions. Okay. And so that's why we have, you know, the practice, we want to not give rise to the thoughts, okay? Especially these dualistic subject-object subjectivity views. The mental formations, right? We have actions, words, thoughts misguided by ignorance that leave a strong karmic imprint, eventually leading to rebirth, right? So it includes the imprints from the past lives. So these are recorded, right, in our eighth consciousness. So that's something that we carry over with us from life to life. In the present life, okay, so we have our consciousness, we have the karmic imprints from the previous lives coming into our consciousness, right? And so, right, we want to let go of all karmic affinities. Name and form, right, the merging of the mind and body at birth, and the six sense faculties, these are developed. Okay, so contact, and then we have experience, feelings, emotions from our sensations, and then that then generate desires, right? We desire good experience and wish to avoid bad experiences. The grasping or clinging, it's the intensification of the desires, strengthening the forces of karmic imprints again. So these are maybe habits or things that inclinations from the past that then we kind of reinforce those or strengthen those. And then becoming again, so we're ripening of the karma, then it sets the conditions for rebirth again. All right, so and then the future life effects is again the birth, basically continuing the cycle. All right, so what we need to do then, we have to try to break this basically ignorance, right? We have to have the proper views, so understanding the true meaning of life, understanding the purpose, and understanding karma, right? So and then mental formations, right? We have to have right thoughts, speech, action, and livelihood. Consciousness, right? We have to have proper mindfulness. So this is part of the, basically indicating that the Noble Eightfold Paths can help us to break out of this. Okay, and name it for it. Yeah, we don't want to have that dualistic or subject-object view of things. So we shouldn't give rise to that kind of thing. And then also, in terms of, you can say this down here, the contact, that's why we have 4 proper conducts, right? And the precepts, so that we don't get into, we're not supposed to see, look at things that we're not supposed to look at, that is improper, etc. Okay, so the 4, proprieties, you can say. And finally, let go of all karmic affinities. Okay, so, okay. Now, okay, so let me, all right, let me just do this, and then we'll stop right after this one here, basically. So getting to this, the sutra basically is, there's actually, the Heart Sutra is very short, but actually there's a slightly longer version which includes an introduction and a conclusion. Okay, so that's normally not included in the sutra that that we recite or that we learn. But basically, in the introduction, right, it's just basically a description of the venue and audience. So like all Buddhist sutras, they start off, "Thus have I heard," right, and then it goes on to kind of describe the setting. It says, at one time the Buddha was in Ragarja on the mountain of Gurjakuta, along with a great sangha of bhikshus, etc. Okay, so but anyways, in this sutra though, it's not the Buddha Sakyamuni, it's not the Buddha speaking, it's actually Avalokitesvara, okay, Bodhisattva is talking. All right, but it's still a sutra, because in the end, in the conclusion, actually, the Buddha gives his stamp of approval. Okay, so this is actually some of the sutras, they're like this, right? Where it's not the Buddha speaking, but he ultimately gives his stamp of approval to what was spoken, as saying, yes, this is the truth. Okay, so that means that makes it as good as Buddha speaking it. All right. And then so basically I kind of say, okay, it's really talking about the nature of reality, right? The Buddha nature, it's the all-pervading oneness, the emptiness of form, right? The subject-object duality, 5 skandhas, dependent origination or causality. Okay, so that this is all empty. And it's talking about the practice of all bodhisattvas and Buddhas, basically, their practice being the Third Noble Truth, eliminating dukkha or suffering. Okay, and also finally the awakening and achieving enlightenment. Okay, so and then that conclusion. Okay, so this is basically kind of a rough outline of the sutra itself. But okay, so that will next week. Then we'll jump right into the sutra. But today I just wanted to kind of lay the foundation for, because it's going to be talking about the things that we talked about today in terms of so the dependent origination and the 5 skandhas, and also the concept of sunyata, the emptiness. Okay, so that's it. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so if I had said anything wrong or not satisfactorily, I asked the Buddhas for forgiveness, and also I asked Transcendental Masters and lecturers for their corrections.